My idea of a really good director, put people in the right place. Don't even listen to them. Put them in the right place on stage in relationship to one another with the right piece of business. And you never have to say a word. That's the closest you'll ever come to hearing what the writer thinks, is in the stage directions. And so to ignore them is like throwing out jewels. It's always been work with your friends. I work best when I work with people I really like. The relationship between the director and all of the team has got to be pretty close. And really trust one another and respect one another. It's been great. No, it's been, I had a lot of fun. I never studied directing at all. I never read any book about directing. I would say to read plays. The advantage of reading a play is that you can picture it. A movie, it's all done for you. You're looking at somebody else's vision. Whereas if you read a play, you're getting the script, you're getting the dialogue, you're getting the characters, you're getting the setting, but you have to invent the picture. And so much of directing is telling a story through pictures. It's great to get a sense of story. You get more of that, I think, from reading a play than from watching a movie. A movie, you get taken by the music, the lighting. There's so many ways to manipulate an audience, which is wonderful to learn as a movie director. But when you're just wanting to learn how to direct, how to tell a story through the medium of drama, I think the best thing to read would be plays. Everything you read contributes to your imagination. I think literature is very important. When you watch a play, many things tell you whether or not it's been well directed. Do you believe what you're seeing? Are you bored out of your mind? Are the actors on stage, in physical relationship to the set and to each other, making sense? Are they doing things that are interesting? Are they simulating real life, or is it just like, what are they doing? Nobody would ever do that. I remember seeing a production in college when I was becoming aware of what directors do. I had to write a review of the play that was being done in the theater, and it was called The Night of the Iguana, but there was never night. The lighting never told you when it was night. You could not tell whether it was day or night. So that contributes to your belief in what you're seeing. Do the costumes make sense? All of those things tell you whether or not something's been well directed. I grew up in a hotel. My grandparents owned a hotel in what is commonly called the Catskills. And I used to get all the kids together. There were a lot of kids. There was a day camp, and I would get all the kids together, and I'd put on shows. We would choose a play, Oklahoma, South Pacific, Oliver, we did, Guys and Dolls. And from the day camp, we would cast it, and we would do it, and I would direct it, although at the time I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I wouldn't have called myself a director. We were putting on a show, and I know that it sounds kind of silly, but that's where I sort of learned how to direct. And then later, when I actually decided that I was going to try and do something and make a living at this and be professional, I did not think of being a director. And I directed in college. That was a freak thing. Where I went to school, there was always, there's a play, like 5 plays during the course of a year. And I was not in the drama department. And the people in the drama department decided they wanted to do a musical. And none of the teachers were willing to direct a musical. And for some reason that I still, to this day, all these 50 years later, don't understand, is why they came to me and asked me if I would be willing to direct it. And I did. And it was a big success. It was incredible. It was supposed to play for 1 weekend, and it got extended. And the writer of the show lived in New York and came to see it and said that he thought some of my ideas were better than the George Abbott had directed it on Broadway, but my ideas were better. And the head of the drama department, who I didn't even know, because I wasn't in the drama department, took me out to lunch and said, "I've never told anybody this. In all the years I've been doing it, 50 years, I've never told anybody they should do this professionally because it's too difficult." I think finally, for me, it's could I imagine myself dedicating the next X amount of months of my life to this story, to telling this story? And can I tell this story visually in some way that's interesting? But basically in the end, this is purely subjective. What I'm responding to is, do I think I can tell this story in an interesting way visually? It has to be visual for me, whether it's a movie or a play. If I can't get visually excited by it, and I can be very visually excited about a play that when you first read it, you go, well, what's visually exciting about that? A play that I did, Extremities. Extremities takes place in one room. 3 of the characters are being held captive, more or less, by a guy who's tied up in a fireplace. I mean, what could be less interesting visually? The guy's in the fireplace, and there's 3 women, and what do? And you start to think, okay, let me try and figure out where, for example, do you put the fireplace? I mean, he's the focal point of the play. You got to be able to see him, but he's in a fireplace. Now, if I put him upstage center, which is where you'd want him, you want him to be in the center. That means every time anybody walks in front of him or stands in front of him, they're going to be blocking him. You're not going to be able to see him because he's down here. You know, he's on the floor. And so it presents a whole lot of problems visually. So when we made the set, without anybody realizing this at all, nobody, even the actors didn't realize it. The set was, the fireplace came out. It was in the room, and there was a staircase next to it, and I don't remember what there was on the other side, but the thing was that you could always have, without the audience being aware of it, because the actors weren't even aware of it, all of the actors could be on one line. And it never looked that way because they were on different levels. And the thing was to be able to stage it from beginning to end using that plane and not make it obvious at all to anybody. You could come downstage, but never go too far upstairs. I don't know if I'm describing it well enough, but it was, you know, it was very, very clever, and it was very powerful, and that was an example where the staging got the great reviews, even better than the play. Yeah, and it could always be different, like Extremities. For me, it was the excitement of doing a thriller on stage and seeing if I could really make people scared, and because it's a scary play, and I did, and we did. Everybody concerned with it. It was it turned out to be a big hit, and really, the writing, like I say, when I first read it, was not what attracted me to it. It was what was underneath. And then I really realized how well written it was. And it's really a well written play. He's a terrific writer. I usually become very close to the writers I work with. More often than not. Sometimes I worry about that because I think maybe I'm too imposing my own self too much. But I really, really do believe it's my responsibility to be truthful to the writer. I know there are other directors, and that they're right. Their truth is to deliver a hit. My truth is to stay as. Of course, I want to deliver a hit, but I also don't want to distort what the original thing was about in order to get to that hit. And I would feel terrible if I convinced a writer to do something that proved to be wrong. The first day of rehearsal of Extremities, the first act ended, and we were really feeling great about it. You know, blocking it, it felt terrific. The second act starts, it's supposed to be like a few hours later, and these women who have lived through a rather traumatic experience are now eating dinner. And the guy is in the fireplace, and they're eating, and they're talking about, well, I don't remember what they're talking about. 5 minutes after we set it up, we came back, went to lunch, and we came back, and we set it up so that they were eating, and he's in the fireplace. And sat there, and I went, this is ridiculous. How the hell would they be sitting and eating? What happened between then and I said to the writer, Bill Lester Simone, who I adore, and is a wonderful writer. I said to him, Bill, how is this going to work? It doesn't make sense. So, and he wasn't, everybody was like, well, what now? I said, well, it's obvious what now. The second act has to start exactly where the first act ended. You have to show what happened. You can't just skip several hours. It doesn't play in this play. It's, you know, you have to keep the tension going. And you can't just say, well, now we're going to sit and eat. And that's what we did. And it was the very first day of rehearsal, of the blocking rehearsal. And then, like I say, if you catch it fast enough, something happens in my stomach. My stomach falls. I like get nauseous. Also, if I'm staging a play and I get to a place where everything's going great, it's going great, everybody's excited, so I'm pretty good at that, at staging. And we get to a place where you hit a brick wall. Now, I don't know where people move. If I don't know where they move, then it's wrong. The script is wrong. Something's wrong. And I know it's not me. I know it's not me. Because we just can't figure out what would happen now. We got to a place where we're landlocked. Nothing, it's like the breath stopped. You stop breathing. You know, there's nowhere to go. I have a writer in me. I can write. So I can always figure out a way out. I can always give the writer an alternative that might work, and usually does. Or they come up with something. I tell them what I think is wrong, and they come up with something to fix it. Or sometimes an actor does. An actor just comes to this, well, why don't I just, and they do something, and, oh yeah, just do that, and it works. I was asked to do it as a movie by a company in Japan. And they said that in Japan, to make political thrillers was a no-no. They couldn't do that. But could I come up with something? So they gave me a ton of material, and I did a lot of research. You could tell, I knew everything. I still know. That I retained, pretty much, even the names. But I got to know pretty much everything about that subject matter. I read books, I read articles, I saw documentary footage that was translated for me specifically. And I wrote a treatment for a movie, and it was called The 9 Files. And I had it with me and brought it back to Japan. And all of my friends in Japan said, don't. The Yakuza will kill you. You can't get away with this. They'll never let you. They'll torture you. So I decided not to turn it in. I said I lied to the movie company, and I said that I never did it. And I put it away, and it was for years sitting in a box. And then I started to write myself and decided I'd like to write something. Why don't I write Blood as a play? And then as I started to write the play, I got to the bad guys, the ministers, and I thought this is going to be a really boring movie. So then I came up with the idea of why don't they sing their scenes and do it as a musical and do them as as comic characters rather than as making them these evil, make them sort of, the bad guys, but the comedy guy, but, we've seen that before, where the bad, even in, Home Alone, the bad guys are comedic. But I thought that could work. And that first line from the Mikado came into my head. If you want to know who we are ministers of Japan. I just was watching something on AMC or TMC, and they were talking about, it was somebody talking about Betty Davis. I don't remember who, and he said, so what makes star quality? And she says, oh no, it was Anthony Hopkins talking about Katharine Hepburn. What makes star quality? And she said, I don't know, but I have it. It's the truth. I don't know what makes a good actor. First of all, they have to be interesting on their own. I don't think there are that many good actors who aren't interesting people. I don't mean smart. I just mean interesting. There's something about them. They are interesting to listen to. They have great voices, maybe, or they have a great face, or they're just fun to listen to. And then the ability to make you believe that they are who they say they are. And the willingness to expose themselves. You have to be willing to strip away a lot of stuff when you're an actor. I honestly believe it's like one of the bravest professions on this earth. It's so scary to be an actor and to have to reveal that much about yourself. Especially on stage, where you do it night after night after night. Well, in order to play a character, you have to invest some part of yourself, because you're you. I mean, if we were to do a scene now and you find out that your lover has committed suicide, and you're playing somebody in Russia in 18 whatever, it's you. You're going to react the way you would react. Maybe you would react in Russian if you were being truthful to the writing, but the emotional response would be the same. Your tears are yours. The faces that you would make are yours. The exposure of that emotion would be yours. It doesn't matter who and then somebody else is playing the same part. It's going to be different than the way you do it, because his way of expressing that kind of grief would be different. And you have to really, at times, show very ugly parts of yourself. I think one of the saddest things about actors generally is that they think they can do everything. So that there's a part for a really lovely young ingenue, and somebody who's not a lovely young ingenue goes in because they're too old, but they still think of themselves as being lovely and young. And they're certainly not ingenues anymore. Or maybe they never were. You know, you have to have some, as an actor, you also have to be a casting director in a way. You have to be able to tell whether or not you can play that part. I've cast sometimes when I knew there was a better actor, but that this person was just better for the part. Yeah, the play was going to be more believable, you know, or the movie would be more believable. And it's worked the other way around as well. I don't think you can make a ruling for that. It's so subjective. Casting is so subjective anyway. And some people are great at it, and some people just aren't. I mean, you could put people through several auditions and try them several times. And the worst is when somebody comes in and you love them. They're so good. And then you call them back and they're not. And you try working with them and then you call them back again and they're not. And it's so disappointing because you really thought you had it. You thought that person had it. The thing that actors don't really ever, I think, understand is when you go into audition, the director, the casting director, whoever is sitting there, they want you to be good. They don't want you to fail. They're looking for somebody good. And it's so disappointing if you look great and sound great, and then you read and you're not great. So maybe I'll ask you to read again, and it's disappointing when you're not. You want people to be good. Like I say, it's instinctive. In the end, you just have to go with your instincts, and sometimes you're so sorry. The pressure could be, we start rehearsing in 2 weeks or in 10 days. I still don't have this person who's got a big part. I can't be bothered thinking about that anymore. I've got to deal with the set designer. I've got to deal with all this other stuff. I have to know who that I have a cast. You know, I can't be worried that we don't have somebody to play that part. So there's that kind of pressure as well. Then there's the other kind of pressure, which is, oh, I loved him. The other people are sitting around, oh, I love him. I love him, love, 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 love. And you go, but I didn't like him at all. Oh, you're wrong. I loved him. He'll be great, you'll see. The writer says, oh, he's exactly what I pictured. Then they come to you 2 weeks into rehearsal and say, he stinks. I told you he stinks. Fire him. It depends on how hard up you are. You need somebody in every part. You must cast every role unless you rewrite it. And sometimes, you know, it comes down to he's not as good looking as the person should be. He seems like a nice person. He'd be easy to work with. That's on the plus side. You know, we could always put a wig on him. You know, there's all that goes into it. I need somebody in that part. What can I do? There's nobody better going to come along. Nobody wants to play that part. It's not enough money. It's not enough whatever. It's too small a part to get a really great actor. That happens a lot. it's very hard to cast a play that has two leads or more of the same sex on the same age. Because if you're a star and you're going to do a play, you don't want to have to share the stage with another actor of your sex. It's fine to share it with somebody of the opposite sex, but it's not very comfortable if it's 2 women or 2 men, or 3 women or 3 men, because then it becomes competitive, and then it becomes, you're not as important. If you're casting, there's a play called Compulsion about Leopold and Loeb. If you had to cast 2 stars in that, is very hard. And to cast 1 big star and 1 not so big makes it look like one of the parts is much bigger than the other, when actually they're the same. You know, that's when casting becomes really difficult, I think. And I've fired actors. I've fired actors. I've fired maybe an actor once or twice who I found obnoxious, really hard to work with. There are a lot of actors, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are some actors I would have loved to have fired, and I'd never want to work with again. They just come in with this attitude of being, they just were in some movie or something, and they are so full of themselves. They just think they know the answer to everything. And that's obnoxious. Or somebody who is really rude. I can't stand that. Somebody who's rude or who's mean and loves to make trouble. The problem is that sometimes they're the stars and you can't do anything about it. The only thing you can do is quit yourself. That's when it's the worst. When it's somebody in a smaller part. Sometimes actors are really intimidating. I'm not a particularly nasty person. So if you come at me with being really nasty, at this point in my life, I would just say, fuck you. But, when I was younger and starting out and all that, I would be terrified. There are so many times I've heard other directors say, I don't want to go to work tomorrow, I have to face so-and-so. I don't want to have to face them. An actor who's particularly nasty. They don't want to do it. They just don't want to do it. So you go, okay, let's do something else. What would you prefer to do? I don't know, you're the director. You tell me. You just have to argue or find a resolution. And it's not worth fighting unless you really, really think that the actor is wrong. You have to say this. I did a movie, it's a very good movie, and the leading man is a very well-known actor and a very good actor. In the main lady and they have an affair, and she realizes that she really is not in love with him, and that to keep going is really doing him a disservice, because she's not in love with him, and it's never going to she's never going to be in love with him, and he wants to marry her, and she just knows that it's not going to work out. And she tells him, she has a scene where she comes and breaks up with him. And it's a really nice scene, and he's wonderful in it. All through the making of the movie, until we shot that scene, he would come to me, and it really hurt our relationship, because I would not give in. He would say to me, I don't understand why she wouldn't want me. I'm a good-looking guy, I'm intelligent, we get along. Why wouldn't she want me? Ask her. I don't know. She's the one having the affair with you. She's not in love with you. She's simply not in love with you. I don't know why she wouldn't be in love with me. I mean, what do you say to that? He wanted the whole thing rewritten so that the last third of the movie would be a completely different movie if she went with him. And he couldn't understand why she wouldn't go with him. What are you going to say to him? Maybe you're lousy in bed. I don't know. You go into it hoping for the best, hoping that you can get what you need from that actor, that you can, you can draw it out of them in some way. Although I'm not a great believer in that. A lot of the actors who have been in my movies and plays have won awards. And, I think when I was directing, had a reputation for being really good with actors. You drew this out of them, Most of the time it's because they're good. You just hope that you can make it work. You hope that give them enough close-ups if it's a movie, because some actors tend to make stronger impression when there's more, especially on television, when there's more close-ups of them. If they're lit beautifully, they get away with more. It's a way of learning the script and learning where to go and learning, now I pick up a spoon, now I put down the spoon, which is stage business. All of that, whatever you're doing on stage with your hands or, any mechanical thing you're doing is business, is called business. And you're working out all the business, the timing of it, all of that. So you're laying in layer after layer. You're learning your lines, learning about your character, learning about the play itself, where does it take a turn. It's your way of learning everything. It's learning the play, how to do the play, or how to make the movie, how to do a scene, how to play a scene. I mean, to me, that's what a rehearsal is about. Okay, we walk into a space. The space has been designed by the designer, but that's also part of the rehearsal because the director has already gone through the set with the designer and said, I want a table here, I want this thing to be here, I want a sofa over here. The placement of all of the furniture is there. Then you're putting in the actors. And you could move the furniture if it doesn't work out. But assuming it does, you put the actors in. Now, the actor looks at you and says, the script says that I come in to make breakfast. Where am I coming from? Okay, well, we have choices here. You could come from there. Let's say that that's the bedroom. that door is the bedroom, that door is the hallway, that door is the bathroom. Oh, okay. So I'm coming in. Am I coming from the bathroom? Or am I coming from the bedroom? Did I just wake up? And if I'm coming from the bedroom, wouldn't I naturally walk to the bathroom? Because I pee when I wake up in the morning. It's the first thing I do. Or I throw water on my face, or whatever. So then, why don't we have you coming out of the bathroom? So if we have you coming out of the bathroom, maybe a good way to start the scene would be, the scene it's quiet and you hear a toilet flush. And then the door opens and you come out and maybe people will laugh even, so that's what the director, you start to, so what would I do when I come out? Well, I don't have time to make eggs. There's no place. So what would I eat? Well, probably, it says that we need you to be eating. I guess, what about cornflakes? That's fast. You could just pour it in. And little by little, you build a scene. You could be working with a really brilliant actor who's going to come in and do something really, they don't need your help. They've read the same script you've read. They have their ideas. So they might suggest something. You say, no, I don't think that works. Or you, whatever. But if you give them ideas, they love it. It's not like they're there to resist you. They're there to work with you. So if you say, let's say, what I like to do is just say, okay, just do whatever you want. We're going to run through the whole first scene. Just do whatever you want. You will inevitably get to a place where they're going to look up and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And then you go, okay, then let's go back to the beginning. And then you do what I just did. And they're so relieved that they don't have to think of it. And they're so grateful. Unless you're giving them stupid stuff to do. Unless you're saying, you come out of the bathroom and you sit down at the table and you just sit there for the next 15 minutes. You never eat. You talk about eating, but you don't eat. Or whatever, I don't know, where you give them some dumb direction, or you say, get the cornflakes, sit down at the table, or bring them over to the table, and then go over there and pick up a book and start to read the book. Then why would I put, what? Well, it'll look better because you're on that side of the stage now, you're on that side of that. I mean, there are directors who talk that way. I always think of doing a play like knitting a sweater. You pick, I don't know how to knit, but I watched people knit for my whole life. And it's knit one, purl two, knit one, purl. You can't drop a stitch. They drop a stitch, they have to and they go all the way back. That to me is the same way you direct a play. You go like you're knitting. You go beat by beat by beat by beat, second by second. And then if it doesn't make sense somewhere, even if it's off the wall, I mean, sometimes when it's off the wall is when it's the best. When somebody does something completely unexpected, but it makes sense on some level. It makes emotional sense. Then it's great and it's creative. Which is why I could never, ever understand And it's a dead giveaway that people don't know what they're doing to me. When they say, make a rehearsal schedule, so-and-so can't be there on Monday because she has a film. Okay, so she's in scene 3, so we'll just start with scene 4. And we'll skip scene 3 until the next day. For me, it can't be done. And the reason it can't be done is because of what I just said. It's beat by beat by beat. I don't know what's going to happen in scene 3 that's going to affect scene 4. In other words, if at the end of scene 3 I have a temper tantrum and I throw all the books off of there, scene 4 is going to start with all the books all over the place. If I haven't rehearsed scene 3, I don't know that. I'm pretty honest. And I've been, people have said, nobody's ever talked to me like that. Nobody's ever said anything to me that mean. But somehow from you it doesn't sound mean. I've had that said to me a lot too. Yeah, because I'll say, that was lousy. That didn't work. Very often, while you're doing a scene, I'm going in my head through that toolkit, trying to think, what can I say to make this better? And that's one reason why I really, I don't like talking to actors very much. Because I always think it's so, they take everything you say and blow it up and worry about it and think about it. Like I might say some little stupid thing that means nothing to me. And the next day they come and they, I'm so sorry I did that and I'm never going to do that again. No, do it again. It was great. I didn't mean that it was bad. I just meant you just get misunderstood all the time. It's so possible to be misunderstood. So I just try not to talk very much. I try, my idea of a really good director, put people in the right place. Don't even listen to them. Put them in the right place on stage in relationship to one another with the right piece of business. And you never have to say a word. They just get it. They understand what you mean. Oh, I get it. Oh, I get it. Yeah. I get where my energy should be going. I get it. And where she is in relationship to me. And yeah. And to me, that explains everything. More than talking. I don't know if I should be naming names here, but Sam Shepard, when we were doing Safe Passage, came to me and said, this is the first time I ever did a movie where I don't even bother reading the script because I know that I don't have to bring in any ideas. Your ideas are always going to be better than mine. The business that you give me to do, the blocking that you give me. Judy Davis has said that to me over and over again. You just tell me where to go. I'll do whatever you want me to do. Anne Bancroft would always say that. Don't tell him, just show me what you want. Just do it. Do it. That happens a lot with me. I can get up and show an actor exactly just the physical part. And then they know what to do. Oh, I get it. Yeah, it happens over and over and over again. I think there are actors who are terrible on, how can I say this? They're terrible, they're good in the movies, they're terrible on stage. I don't think the other way around. They may not have the charisma to be on screen. I did a play with Vanessa Redgrave where she had to play a Southern woman who was somewhere on the scale of Blanche Dubois. And she came to rehearsal. She insisted on wearing pedal pushers. She's supposed to ring a little ginger bell. She had a cowbell. She's supposed to be smoking these, cigars. Cigarettes. She was smoking a cigar. And it was like everything opposite of what you would have wanted from this very feminine Southern character. And she came to rehearsal and she did that, and I was totally intimidated by her. I mean, she's Vanessa Redgrave, the greatest living actress in the English language. This was, years ago. And I just thought, isn't she a genius? I would never think to play this part that way. And the writer was like, she's a genius. We both were like in awe of her. We couldn't believe it. How did she come up with this? It's so completely not what either one of us imagined. And then we went into tech rehearsal. And it was in London. And in London, you don't get a lot of rehearsal time. In New York, you get a week of tech. In London, you get a day or two. You're expected to take the whole thing in a day. We put this thing on stage, and then it was so apparent that this was wrong. This is ridiculous. This is so ridiculous. It makes absolutely no sense. The character's name is Mrs. Honey, and she's ringing a cowbell, and she's walking around talking like that, and pedal pushers, and it was ridiculous. So I said, in the middle of the rehearsal, she stopped, and she said to me, "Bob, darling, I feel very phony." So I said, "Good. Listen, get through the rehearsal, because we have to get through it for tech. And then you and I have to go talk." So we go to talk after, and me and Martin Sherman, the writer, we went to an Indian restaurant, one of these places that's open all night, and we told her about Gone with the Wind, and we told her about Streetcar Named Desire, and every Southerner we've ever met, and the next day, I come in, and the stage manager says, "Vanessa would like you to come to her dressing room." I go to her dressing room. She's wearing a little pink dress. She's had a wig made. How she did all of this overnight, I have no idea. A little gray wig, very genteel, almost exactly like Vivian Leigh in Streetcar. That same hairdo, little flip on the bottom, gray. She's wearing these, I forget what you call those shoes. Some are like, not flip-flops, anyway. And she's sitting there at her dressing room table making a paper fan. And she's, "Is this better?" We opened and we've never seen this played this way, but it's better. It's certainly going to be better. And she did it that way, and without rehearsing it. But she had rehearsed it, as she said, in her head, by doing the reverse. That's how she works. What can I tell you? Everybody's got their own way of working. And she said, I remember I said to her, "You're very brave." She said, "You have to be when you're very stupid." Helen Mirren had to have a real big breakdown in the end of the Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone. And then she's driving in a car with Olivier Martinez, and she has to really cry for the first time in the movie. And and I'm sitting and talking to her. We're sitting and talking, whatever. And I said, "You're not going to, don't you? What?" She said, "What are you, crazy? I'm not going to cry." She said, "I want menthol, menthol." She said, "I'm not putting myself through that." And she was great. I mean, she was great. I didn't have to ask her to do it for real. She just was great. She knew what she could do, and she knew what she couldn't do. Judy Davis and Judy Garland had to have a scene like that. She came in kicking chairs. She got herself into this rage of whatever, and then played the scene. She didn't have Helen to do anything. Give me everybody's different. Susan Sarandon used to say, "Okay, we're talking. She'd say, "I have to go now and mood up. I have to go mood up." And she'd go off for 5 minutes and come back, and she'd be a completely different person. Who could say? Actors, they're amazing. I think they should do a lot of preparation. I really do. I think that they should. I don't think they should learn their lines. It's not if they're doing a play. I think they should learn their lines in rehearsal. In a movie, it's different. I think if you can learn your lines before you get to the set, it's not a bad idea. Because before you go into makeup and hair and all that, and then, usually you rehearse, it's good to have the lines, I think. Most of them don't. Most of them learn the lines while they're putting on their makeup. But I think that an actor who's preparing for a stage role should be really familiar with the script, but without learning it. I think the best to learn it during the rehearsals, so that everything becomes organic. In other words, if you have a line, like I said before, what do I have to do today? And you have to get the cornflakes. You get the cornflakes. What do I have to do today on the line? What do I have to do today? The two actions the two things become one. The action goes with, I learn the line as I'm also learning the action, so that it's always there. It feels completely natural. It's not like I have to think about it. There should be as much research as possible. They should know the whole story of that person's life. You don't have to be obsessively crazy and write every detail, but I think you should know the major things: how you grew up, where you grew up, what your relationship was with your parents, how you did in school, all the things that are necessary to be a real person, and also that are relevant to the script. If it's not relevant to the script, it may not be necessary to make yourself crazy to learn about something that you don't need to know about. I think it's good to know about the politics of the time. If you're doing a period thing, you know what class you're in, economically, socially, what's going on politically in the country where you stand, depending on what's relevant to like I say, what's relevant to the character. For every scene that you play, for every scene that you're in, you should be asking yourself, what does my character want and need? Yeah, what am I going after? Why am I doing this? Why would I even choose to do this? If this is a scene from a movie, why am I doing this? I'm not working as a director anymore. What would be my motivation for sitting down with you and doing this? In every scene, there's always got to be a want. What do I want from this? And sometimes you have to actually ask yourself, what does the writer want me to want? You have to sometimes look at it that way. Why is this scene here? When you're writing a script, you have an opportunity to put in 1,000 scenes and you get it down to 100. Why those 100 and not the other 900? What did you leave out? And I've had this happen to me so many times. Rehearsals. And the first thing somebody will say is, cross out all the stage directions. Because, it's going to be our production. We don't want it to be. And that's bullshit, because, yes, some stage directions are written by, if you're not doing the first production of a play, often you're doing one that's published by Samuel French. And the stage directions will have been written by the stage manager. But most of the time, or the director, but most of the time, they're written by the writer. And if you're in a room where you don't have the writer, that's the closest you'll ever come to hearing what the writer thinks, is in the stage directions. And so to ignore them is like throwing out jewels. I mean, anything that gives you an idea or gives you your imagination going is so valuable. It's so valuable because your ideas come from all sorts of weirdness. You're thinking about something and you're, oh my God, wow, what if they did that? That would be so cool. Wow, we did Strangers on a Train, and I don't know where this idea came in my head, was that it's a book. How do you put it on stage? And I just kept thinking of a stage that kept revolving, that kept changing, the set kept changing. And is that even possible? And then I thought, well, that's, gets to be boring. But what if around it was movies? And then I didn't know if that was possible. Could you, because I thought it should all be black. And I thought, I don't even know if you could project movies onto black. Movies are usually projected onto white. The screen is white. And so I just, you invent things and you try them out. Turns out to work pretty well. Practice is not preparation. There's a difference between practice and preparation. Preparation is doing all these other things, watching movies, reading books, poetry, whatever, other plays by the same author. That's preparation. Practice is taking what you learned in the preparation and then learning in lines and practicing them. The writer knows the most about a character when things begin, at the very beginning. Then the director I think knows a little more sometimes even than the writer. Sometimes. Depending on how perceptive the director is. I think there are probably directors who don't care to know that much about the character. They don't think it's their business. It depends. A lot of movie directors don't care at all. They'll tell the actor, that's your problem. That's why, they're there to make the movie, and they don't worry about the acting that much until the editing. That's when they start to get more involved in the acting. And then but what I think is that by the time, especially with a play, by the time the play opens, the actor, if he's an intelligent actor, a good actor, I should say an intelligent actor, not a necessarily good one, they know more about the character than anybody. They have absorbed enough of that character to really understand what the character would do, wouldn't do. If you have an actor who you really trust, and you get to the first day of rehearsal, and he says, I don't think my character would do this, you have to say, wait until further down. And then by the time you open, or you're approaching opening, he's still saying, I don't think my character would do this, then he's got a point. You have to be very open with one another and really trust one another and respect one another and to be as truthful as you can be, regardless of how it's going. It's always been work with your friends. I work best when I work with people I really like and who are my friends. And we could become friends pretty quickly if I feel like they get me and I get them. I also believe in trusting them. I mean, what's the point if you don't trust them? Like for the Judy Garland film, I wanted, if possible, for the sequences that were supposed to be from our movies to look like three-strip Technicolor, the way Technicolor looked then, as opposed to the way it looks now. And he achieved that. He actually got that look. And then there was the black and white stuff, and I wanted it to look authentically black and white, which was very difficult at the time because it's expensive and none of the labs wanted to develop black and white movies. So that was hard, but he did it. He shot the black and white for black and white. And the color. I would try to make television movies the same way you would make a regular feature film. I really tried to stretch the money, the look, everything. And that's not easy to do because people are working all the time. So to get them all in one room is not easy. But, one at a time, you talk to each one and you try as much as you can to get them all together beforehand. I did. I always tried. I never wanted to rehearse, but I always wanted to get the technical aspect of it. I wanted to make sure that everybody thought we were making the same movie. I would say a lot of directors don't give a shit. They don't care. What do they care if the crew is happy? They want them to be efficient. They don't care about happy. My feeling is I want them to be happy and efficient. I don't like discord. I don't like tension. And there are certain people who love to make tension. They feel they work best when there's a tense atmosphere. Not me. That's one of the reasons I never loved making movies. The expectations were, maybe it's because I did so many, what almost impossible, what would be considered impossible. I made elaborate movies for television, which is hard to do on a schedule. And I may have driven people crazy, demanding certain things that I couldn't get because they didn't have the money or the time. But I would insist. And I often got the results I wanted, but I pissed people off. I got along really great with the crew. I never got along with the people above. The people who worked in the offices, the line producers hated my guts. I could tell they hated me because I was so nice to everybody. And no, I'm serious. I knew that they hated me for it. They thought that I was being too soft or, just being too nice. I've always had really great relationships with DPs. It's the most important one, I think. It's for the director, because he's really, you're at his mercy. Even if I'm doing something very kind of throwaway silly, or what I think of as throwaway silly, you're trying to, or I'm trying to do it with a reasonable amount of intelligence. So I'm thinking of critics. Critics mean more to me than they might to an ordinary film director. I would never think, how am I going to please the critics? When I was directing constantly, the best, for me, the periods of time that I enjoyed the most were in between projects, when I knew I had one coming up that I sort of couldn't wait to do. I couldn't wait to get my hands on. And yet I didn't have to wake up tomorrow and do it. I knew that it was a month away, so I could go to Europe, I could go to Rome, I could go to London, I could go somewhere, I could just do whatever I wanted to do. I had the money, and I knew I had a job, and I knew what the job was, and I could prepare for it. I would do whatever preparation there was to be done, and I would travel a lot. I spent very little time in the United States during those years. I was working in London, I was working in Israel, I was working in Tokyo, I was working in Paris, I was working in LA. I lived in New York, but I was never in any one place. I was always somewhere, and and I enjoyed that time in between. I always ran away from success. I always ran in the other direction. If I had a hit on Broadway, I went to Tokyo. And I had a lot of big hits in Tokyo, I went to London. If I had a big hit in London, I'd go to Italy for 3 months. I got out of town. I'd run away. I can't explain it. It's not a healthy thing. It's something I honestly regret in a lot of ways. But I never allowed myself to enjoy the successes that I had for very long. You know, I could have a big hit in the West End in London, sold out, packed houses. What did I do? I left. I'd leave. I'd go somewhere else. I was not very good at handling success. I'd be on the cover of New York Magazine. Get out of town. I was profiled in the New Yorker magazine. Get out of town. That was me, and I still don't understand it completely. To me, it's having done good work. That's the fact that I've done things that people come up to me telling me that Ben changed his life forever. Judy Garland was one of the whatever. Blood was one of the best things he's ever seen in his life in this little tiny theater. You know, having those moments mean the most to me. They mean a lot to me when people, and I've had a lot of those moments. People love a lot of the work that I've done. And that makes me feel good. And so I'm grateful for that. And I like the attention when it was there, when I got it. You know, it's very nice to be walking around the streets of London, having a huge hit, you know, playing at the West End. There was one point where, I don't know if you know, Shaftesbury Avenue is sort of the Broadway of London, and there's 4 theaters. 3 of them had plays by me. In the beginning, I used to be really, 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 really nervous every time I had to do anything. I would be really scared that I wouldn't be able to do it. You know, I would fail. Now, I don't feel that way. I feel like I could go into any, you could hand me a script, and if I sat and read it for an hour, I could direct it. I'd come up with something interesting. There would be something about it that would be interesting. At least it would be intelligent and coherent. And I could do that much more easily on stage than in a movie, which is why I always preferred working in the theater to working on film. I never had the technical ease with film that I have with theater. It's been great. No, it's been, I mean, I had a lot of fun. A lot of fun. The 80s in New York, when I had been running on Broadway and Extremities, I had a couple of big hits off Broadway at the Public Theater. Meryl Streep, and I was working with Meryl Streep and Colleen Dewhurst and Elizabeth Wilson. I mean, these top people. Jason Robards, Madeline Kahn. You know, these were my friends. I loved being around it. And I loved the fact that I remember we were doing something with, I was doing something with Anne Bancroft, a play, and she had to get on the floor and crawl around on the floor for a moment. And I thought, I could never get my mother to do that. Actors will do it. Actors are like children. They're playing. We're all in this room playing together. What could be more fun than that? We're all together and we're playing. We're not doing anything, we're not solving the world's problems. We're playing. And I always think that's amazing. You could get to be that old and still crawl around on the ground play. It moves me to think about it. I also used to love coming into the theater before the play starts, and the stage is empty. There's nothing there but the furniture, and you know that soon 6 or 8 or 10 people are going to come in, and only those people know the secret of how to make this a play. When they all get up there, this empty space is going to become a magical place, and hundreds and thousands of people are watching them, and only they can do it because they're the only ones who have the secret in their heads. Yeah, I used to love that about it.